Hi, I'm Michael Fields. Welcome to this edition of The Media. We have a lot of media issues to discuss this week, and our panel is here to share their insights with you. Meet, please, Heather Page Preston, Dr. David Spiceland, and Dr. Frank Aycock, all of App State's Department of Communication. Folks, we have had recently I think a fairly big event in the media, especially the electronic media, when we have a black African-American male full-time anchor on NBC News, Lester Holt. I incorrectly said a few weeks ago when we were talking about that he was the first, and David, I think it was you who pointed out he was not the first.
Max Robinson,
on
ABC News out of Chicago.
When they had the triumvirate, when ABC had that, and how many years ago was that? In the
was it
late 70s,
late
early
70s.
80s.
I met him in Chicago one time.
So and that triumvirate as host didn't last very long, as I remember. But it brings up this whole issue of equity in network news. We have lots and lots of women hosts and anchors, most of them blonde, beautifully coiffed, well-dressed to accentuate their positive physical virtues, and on cable channels, Fox in particular, but not exclusively. And we've always had a lot of diversity on the local news scene. But why have the networks been so slow to follow suit, other than Leslie Stahl and CBS?
Consultants.
Tell us.
Local news in the big markets, and I have interned at some of the places, well, one place in particular in Charlotte, and they bring in these consultants, and the consultants will, and these are broad strokes because it's changing, but a lot of times they'll hold themselves up into a motel room and they'll watch the news for sometimes a week or two.
All the channels in the market.
Well, sometimes, but they're paid by a particular station. So they'll watch the news and then they'll say, okay, here's what you need to do to get ratings. Not to have better news necessarily, although they'll tell them what kind of news stories to do. Man bites dog.
If it bleeds, it leads,
oh, yeah.
That sort of thing.
And if you look at Charlotte, there are different personalities for at least the 3 or 4 local newscasts. In fact, just I saw something the other day that there's a station in Charlotte, the Fox station, not the Bayhackle station, as I
which was the
understand.
former Fox affiliate.
Right. But they are dumping their format. I don't have the article in front of me, but this is changing quite a bit. But a lot of it is because of the consultants who say this is what you got to do because they pay them big money.
Do the networks not use consultants?
I don't think they do. I could be wrong, but I don't think they do.
I think the networks, correct me if I'm inaccurate, but the networks may not feel the tendency to farm out these decisions to a consulting firm like Magid or some of the others. I said Magid, not Maggot. And hence they want to make these decisions in-house. Local stations may not, they're built, run differently. Their main motivation is ratings. That's not quite the main motivation, awards, kudos, things like that at the networks. Why then? So in other words, you're saying that what we have seen, African Americans, a higher ratio of women on local newscasts, Hispanics, Asians on newscasts, that we've not really seen on the anchor level at the networks is mainly, just the first time I ever heard of consultants doing something good. Frank, what do you think?
Well, I think, as you said, there is a difference between local, network, and cable. But let me go back. I'll take us back even further than Dave did.
How is that possible?
On the first African American news anchor in the late '60s, early '70s. Ed Bradley, who really came to fame with 60 Minutes, and actually substitute anchored for Dan Rather. Yes. But he was really the first to anchor any type of network news. He anchored a 2-minute drop-in that ran Eastern Time 10 o'clock, actually 9:58, on Sunday nights. At that point in time, Sunday night was the top night in terms of television by far, the most watched time period. So they actually, CBS actually put him on right in the middle of prime time on the busiest night or the most watched night of the week. So we can really go back to Ed Bradley as the first to anchor any type of network news, even though it wasn't a 30-minute newscast.
I know, Heather, let me present it to you. We talked about the difference in the philosophy and the necessity to reach out and be more inclusive on the local part of the local stations, and somewhat also in cable news. It's interesting to note that if you watch the four major network affiliates, in Charlotte, WBTV, the CBS affiliate, really doesn't have a glamour girl, a beautiful, someone who's just primed, is there because she is such a knockout. Channel 36, the Gannett station, or the Tegna station, doesn't have one either. And frankly, neither does Channel 9. But the Fox affiliate and the former Fox affiliate are filled with, one after another, it's almost hard to tell them apart, with beautiful, memorably beautiful, blonde, buxom people on camera. Any reason you can make? How do you?
Well, actually, someone did a study and did a head count of blondes versus brunettes, and said that it's actually about half and half. It's actually more toward the blonde side. But it's not solely blonde, which has been the internet meme that's gone around for years now. To justify why, maybe Fox's philosophy is blondes have more fun. I don't know. I really don't know. I can tell you that no matter how you look at it, there's always a double standard in terms of on-air talent between females and males. And how the females have to look, as you have pointed out, is predicated on their appearance. And even though those stations you mentioned don't have glamour girls, think about what all of those women have to go through in order to be on air. So they do the same jobs that the men do, but they do it with curling irons and makeup kits and high heels. So it's just like watching a detective series on TV. How practical is it to chase a bad guy through a high-rise in New York in your heels, right, versus practical footwear?
This is like the Gene, the Fred Astaire, Ginger
Oh, yeah,
Rogers
absolutely.
thing. That she had to do everything Fred had to
But
do,
in
but
heels.
backwards and in heels.
You've got
Yeah.
it, absolutely.
So you're in communications. You teach this every day. What do you say to the average-looking young woman who says, I want to be a TV anchor?
Go for it.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Do you say to her, but you're going to have to face this,
Yes.
this.
This is the reality.
And the males won't have to. We can look at a male anchor person who looks like he's been hit by a truck, and that's okay, but the women have to look. And the exception to this, of course, are people like Pauline Fredericks in the old days, NBC's UN correspondent, Andrea Mitchell, who is certainly a brilliant, but certainly not a looker, and of course in her 60s or 70s. But I don't think Andrea Mitchell would get a job in television today.
Well, the argument's been Walter Cronkite wouldn't get a job in television. Chad Huntley wouldn't get a job in television. Roger Mudd wouldn't get a job in television because of this idea. Actually, I agree with Heather on this. I do think there is a real double standard.
Oh, absolutely.
Young, blonde, attractive, that's the women's side. For the men, it's
Authority.
Men, authority, experience. They don't have to look like they just stepped out of GQ. In fact, one of the reasons Peter Jennings lost the job as anchor of ABC the first time around was because he was 24. He was a very handsome guy. He was young, and nobody had believed he had any credibility whatsoever.
Yeah.
They thought he was a lightweight.
Well, but,
Yes.
but I've heard the opposite. I heard I heard, that he voluntarily went into the field and began to hone his skills.
Only after ABC suggested that
Yeah.
he volunteered.
Well,
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I agree with my esteemed colleagues here totally. I think things are changing. I think that as more and more women enter into management, which I think they are, things may change. And I think you do have to, if you're a man, you do have to do a lot of the prepping, and you point out for me a man, a male, I'm gonna get in trouble on this one, who has long, and I mean long hair, who's on the air. I mean, there is a standard of some sort that says you need to cut your hair, need to do this, need to do that.
By that same token, point out a female who has really short hair other than Rachel Maddow. You know, it's,
That's-
yeah.
I mean,
There's an
look at the lineup
Yeah.
on Fox News.
There's-
Well,
It
but at
looks
the-
like
Yeah.
the runway.
Yeah, but
it really
at
does.
the same time, look at the lineup on the morning shows on CNBC. Okay? At least when you go to something like The Five, and those people show up on the other shows as well, 2 of the 3 that are normally on there are brunettes, Kimberly Guilfoyle and Andrea Tantera. Dana Perino is blonde, but she's the only one that's on there that's blonde. But you look at CNBC. I watch it on a regular basis, and once this topic came up, I started looking. The only female that was on that was not blonde was an Asian, and I noticed that.
And a very lovely Asian.
Yes, very lovely Asian, absolutely. But I also noticed that that at least 2 or 3 of the blondes that were on there, you know, you start looking closely when this type of topic comes up, had dark roots. So they obviously, the point is that somebody has told them, if you want to get a job here, you need to be blonde.
Well, then define blonde.
Then-
You know what color of blonde? I'm a natural blonde too, but you can tell that I've got highlights, right? So,
Yeah. But I'm talking about blonde,
Yeah,
yellow
I know what
blonde.
you're talking about, yes.
Obviously, the ones with the dark roots didn't do enough prep time. And
here's the reality, folks. Here's the reality. There was an Australian anchor who wore the same suit for an entire year, navy blue suit, with maybe 2 exceptions, okay? No one said a word. And he said he did it as an experiment in solidarity with his female co-host. She got picked on if she wears the wrong color, if she says the wrong thing, if she doesn't look a certain way, right? So that's what we're really getting at. The reason that we're talking about this is just asinine. Why are we not talking about the credibility
Content.
of women? Yes. Why are we not doing that?
they're
Why?
training their experience.
And you said,
Yeah.
Dave, you said that as more and more women get into the field. Well, I'm not quite so optimistic about more and more women getting into the field, despite the fact that we try to do everything we can to help that here. In 1999, women made up 36.9% of newsroom staff. Now they're 36.3% of newsroom staff.
and of
this
course,
is National
most of
Women's
that's
Media Center.
behind the scenes.
Yes.
working
Yes.
as
Yes. The
associate
people,
producers.
the people who get to make the
producers.
decisions.
Before
Yes.
we leave this, could I make one little point?
Absolutely.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So if you talk about a bomb, you didn't use the word bombshell.
Yes, I think I did.
Did you think you
I
did?
think I did.
Okay, well.
Shame on me.
That's all right. But
Chauvinist.
what you think is beautiful, and what I think is beautiful, and what any of us think is or are beautiful, it's our own personal. Whether they're buxom, you use the word buxom.
He
so
did indeed.
I can
did
use that
indeed.
as well. So I think we have to keep in mind, you know, if you go up to a goldfish and say, "How's the water?" and the goldfish says, "What water?" You know, you're in that environment.
But Dave, we're not making that decision. The media, using consultants, all right, is making that decision for us. They're putting up an image that says this is what is considered beautiful, just like magazines do it, which is why so many women have eating issues, body image issues.
And they test those too. We haven't talked about that, but they will.
We are in just a moment.
Yeah. So research.
Well, that is a good way to change gears here. David, you have made, and I know, Frank, this is an area in which you have done a lot of work, the issue of polling. We're assaulted every day now with Donald Trump is #1 in the polls, and I mean, there's always a poll on something. how accurate are these polls? What do they really tell us? And why should we be believing them?
I don't know if we should believe them, but to me, the first thing about research is the so what factor. Somebody says that Trump is ahead in the polls in terms of Republicans, and my response would be, so what? What does it matter? Which gets into, and you told me to keep it anecdotal.
Friendly.
Friendly. But one of the things that the media does a bad job at doing, I think they're doing a better job, but margin of error. So we don't have any statistics we can throw up, but when you see that somebody has 45%, somebody else has 43%, and the margin of error is 3%, that means it can go either way, which means statistically it's not significant. But then they say, and everybody does it, they'll say, so-and-so is ahead. What does that mean? And maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Statistically, we don't know. I have seen margins of errors of 6%.
So have I.
That's bad. That's bad research.
Frank, if you were a pollster and you were asking people for political preferences as Republicans and so forth, would you not somehow find a way as a statistician or something to figure in the fact that this far out from an election, the poll is really sort of meaningless? People can say to you, sure, I like Trump, but a year from now, that person might not even be thinking about voting for Trump. I know that it means at this moment, at this point in time, this is the way I feel. But do people really take, when they issue an opinion, seriously this far out?
No, but if I'm a pollster, I'm being paid millions of dollars to run this thing by a media corporation or somebody else. It makes it easy. It makes it an easy story for the news media to take my poll and turn it into a story that can be exciting, can be controversial. You know, when you hear Donald Trump is leading in the polls among all Republicans nationwide, and the amount that he has is 17%. Come on, 83% of the country doesn't want him or want somebody else. Bernie Sanders is coming up in the polls on Hillary. He has nowhere to go but up. There's going to be a group of people out that like him. I think that polling is a good thing because I think it does begin to give us a picture of what the people are thinking about. I'm not so sure that the way it's presented in the news, though, is a good thing because it has a tendency, when you hear Donald Trump is leading the Republicans, then it has either a positive situation for people who say, maybe I should take a second look at this guy, maybe I should reconsider him, or the opposite. Oh my gosh, he's leading in the polls, we've got to do something about this. And so now you see everybody on the Republican side, everybody on the Democrat side, everybody on the independent side, except for those 17%, now coming down on top of Donald Trump.
Before I ask you this, it occurs to me that this is the second show, last week's and this one, in which we've discussed a kind of negligence on the part of media in reporting things. We were talking about how the media really didn't report Donald Trump's comments about Senator McCain accurately. They really didn't. And now again, what's going on? What are we teaching these kids in our classrooms that they think they can massage these numbers and these statements and quotes and things?
Now, well, hopefully we're teaching them some statistical knowledge. One of the things Frank said was, the value of it, that you think it's a good thing, that polling can be a good thing. Any statistical research is only as good as the instrument that is created to collect the material. And there's the old saying of lies, damn lies, and then there are statistics. That's true. It doesn't give you a full picture of what people are thinking, feeling. There are narrow categories we put them in. You don't get the nuances that you get when you talk to individuals. And then to make these presumptions and present
And we
it to
do
the
that.
public. Yes, we do
We
that.
do that.
And we do that without the knowledge that we need. If you go into communication, you don't like math, so you shy away from it. In my case, I took the philosophy of reasoning for my undergraduate math. Now, I do know how to interpret statistics, but that comes with time and experience, and you have to really want to do that.
But if you, but Heather, all of us, if we see, listen to the results of a poll reported by the media, a CBS News / New York Times poll, that sounds pretty authoritative to me.
It does.
How do we get it wrong? Does the information get from the pollster to us and to the public, and somehow get garbled in the passage?
Numbers are difficult to report. You think they're straightforward, but they're not. And like I said, how was that survey conducted? What does the instrument look like? How was it constructed?
What is the margin of error?
What's the margin of error?
paid for it?
Yes.
Who
and
paid for it?
Yes, who paid for it? Do we do anywhere near enough to take that into consideration before we throw those numbers up there? I know that we don't interpret them for the public, and that's really what I'm talking about here. Interpretation goes way, way back, but that's not a good story, and it certainly doesn't fit a time requirement.
But again, how much research on a reporter or on a media person's part does it take to report what the poll found accurately? I'm saying that in so many cases, as Frank, as you pointed out, these things have consequences. Somebody says Trump is up, oh, well, we better do something about that. So Trump is down, we don't have to worry about it. The fact is that these polls do, for the public, mean something. Yet we, the interpreters, seem not to get it or care.
And it's worth pointing out, this deviates a little bit, but it's worth pointing out that the campaigns, they do research. They do focus groups. You get 8, 9 people in a room, and you show them videos, you ask them questions. The Democrats came up with this phrase, risky scheme, several years ago when President Bush, the second Bush, was suggesting a Social Security, not an overhaul, but maybe you can take 10% of your Social Security and invest it in some way. And all of a sudden, and if you listen, you heard the sound bites, the Democrats were saying risky scheme, risky scheme, risky scheme, talking about his scheme, his plan.
Doesn't take long to cement that image in the public's
And whatever
mind.
you do not think about a pink elephant. What did you just think about? All right, I make my point.
You did, and quite effectively.
Colorfully.
Yes, and colorfully as
And-
well.
But at the same time, that risky scheme probably came out of a number of focus groups, just like Dave said. They found out by talking to groups of people, and you never do one focus group, you do 10, 20, 30 of them,
Which costs money.
which
Oh,
costs
yeah,
money.
they all cost money,
Yeah.
sure.
But what you begin to find out from those things, because you can delve deeper into something than asking a yes/no question when you got people sitting around like we are,
True.
sitting around talking about things. So they began to find out that the term risky scheme resonated with these people. And so it began to say, okay, let's try it out on the general public. General public, let's make it a centerpiece of what we're going to say. So everybody said the same way.
A
It's a risky
talking point,
scheme, a
yeah.
risky scheme, a risky scheme. And now people, it starts resonating. But
It's
the only way they
characterizing.
found that out, more than likely, was because they did research.
Interesting. Let's quickly, we have about 2.5 minutes left, and this is a story, a media story, probably worth more time than that. Gannett, huge media company, USA Today, 90-some newspapers coast to coast, and a whole bunch of radio and I don't know whether they have radio anymore, but television stations, electronic media things, just split its company essentially in two. Gannett is going to hold on to all the print, and this new company called Tegna, which is, he sounds like a prescription drug or something we shouldn't be talking about on television.
Do not take if you're living, breathing, and sitting upright.
Exactly.
Is that a foreign car?
Or that, too. The explanation was that print advertising is so off, that it's dragging down our news, our stock market price, our stock price. And so we're going to not damage our electronic media assets by having them in the same. Any reflections on this? Channel 36 in Charlotte is now a Tegna station, not a Gannett station.
I'll react to that. It doesn't surprise me. This is just one in a long line of newspaper broadcast companies that have spun off their broadcast entities and split between, either spun them off entirely and got rid of them, or they've spun off the newspapers. A couple of interesting statements in
We
this.
have just about 30 seconds
Okay,
left.
real quick. With Tegna, they said they're going to focus on high-growth digital assets, which means that we're taking it much further along than just the traditional over-the-air. Whereas with Gannett, they said increase, building scale, sharpening management focus, and strengthening our business, which says to me is one particular person or group is going to manage everything, sort of like what radio does today. And so I think you're seeing two completely different ideas of how companies should be run.
As this moves along, we'll follow it in future weeks and see what the consequences
And
of
print
this
is
are.
not dead.
Oh,
As
no.
a longtime broadcaster, and that's an old term, print's wonderful.
Well,
But it's got trouble.
we'll leave it on that note, that encouraging note. Thank you. That's our program. Thanks for watching. We'd like to hear from you, and you can reach us with your comments and suggestions at watchapptv.com. Until next time, I'm Michael Fields. Thank you for being with us.